In a galaxy full of powerful species, a mother was on her knees. Not a human mother. Not the kind of mother stories get written about. A dragon mother. Scales like armor, eyes like fire, and absolutely no power to feed her own children. She had worked for 84 straight days. In dangerous tunnels. In bad air. In conditions that would break most beings in half. She had earned everything she was owed. Every single credit. And they took it from her anyway. But that is not the shocking part. The shocking part is what happened next. Because one human being, one completely ordinary, nobody special human being, walked into the room where all that power sat comfortable and untouchable. And he brought it to its knees. In this story, you are going to see three things that will stay with you. You will see how invisible the most hardworking people truly are. You will see what real courage actually looks like up close. And you will see an ending that nobody on that station predicted. Not even the dragon mother herself. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The station had a name. Callum Mining Station. Deep space. Far from anything soft or green or alive in the way that living things prefer. It was built for function. Every wall was the same dull gray. Every corridor ran the same cold blue light from ceiling panels that hummed quietly 24 hours a day. The air tasted like recycled oxygen and engine residue. Nothing was decorative. Nothing was warm. The station existed for one purpose only, and that purpose was to pull ore out of the rock of nearby asteroid belts and process it and ship it, and do that again and again without ever stopping. It was not a place people came to by choice. Zara had come here because there was nowhere else to go. She was a dragon, green-scaled, broad-winged, red-eyed, and taller than most of the other species who worked the lower decks. She was also a mother of four. Kira, Thorn, Ash, and little Ember, the youngest, who still had not grown into her wings, and had a habit of making small sounds in her sleep that were almost unbearable in how sweet they were. Zara lived with all four of them in a two-room space on Deck 7. She had made it as close to a home as she could. Clay beads above the sleeping corner. Old symbols scratched into the wall by the door. The symbols were from a language that almost no one in this part of the galaxy still used. Her mother had taught them to her a long time ago, on a planet that no longer existed in any form that could be returned to. She did not talk about that planet. She worked instead. Zara worked the ore tunnels on the lower decks. 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer. She carried containers that were too heavy for most workers to even drag across a flat surface. She went into the deep tunnels where the pressure sometimes dropped without warning, and the walls made sounds that the engineers called settling, but that sounded to anyone with instincts like something very different. She worked hard and she worked quietly, and she asked for nothing that she had not already earned. Every 28 days, workers on Callum Station received their wages. That was the contract. Zara had completed 3 full cycles. 84 days of shifts, 84 days of tunnels and wait and cold air, and coming home to 4 children who watched the door every evening until she walked through it. She had never missed a single shift. On the last day of her 3rd cycle, she walked to the payment office on Deck 4 and stood in the short queue and waited her turn and stepped up to the window and gave her worker identification number. The officer at the window typed something and then looked at his screen for a moment and then said there was a processing issue with her account. He said it the way people say things they have said many times before. Flat. Practiced. Without looking up. Zara asked when the issue would be resolved. He said she would need to speak to Commander Vreth. Commander Vreth ran the station's payment and operations systems. He sat in the payment office at the back, behind a second door, behind a desk that was wider than most species needed a desk to be. He had 5 eyes arranged in a slow arc across his wide, flat head. Gray skinches, long fingers, A voice that never changed in pitch or warmth, regardless of what he was saying. He told Zara the same thing the window officer had said. Processing issue. It would be resolved in time. She asked how much time. He said when they got to it. She stood very still. Her claws pressed into the floor slowly. Her 4 children had not eaten since the previous evening. She had given them the last of her personal ration supply that morning. Her own stomach had been empty for almost a full day. She had told herself that morning that it would be fine because today was wage day and wage day meant food. And now wage day had become a processing error with no timeline, and 4 children were waiting on deck 7 right now in the particular silence that hungry children use when they are trying not to show how hungry they are. She told Vreth that her children had not eaten. Vreth looked at her with all 5 eyes at once. He told her that was a personal matter, not a station matter. Zara left the office. She walked out into the corridor and stood against the gray wall and looked at nothing and said nothing, and felt the weight of 84 days sitting on her chest like something she could not put down or pass to anyone else. She stood there, and Marcus Cole came around the corner. Marcus was not supposed to be anywhere near the payment corridor that afternoon. He was a maintenance technician. Deck-level work, ventilation systems, pressure checks, the kind of electrical faults that nobody else wanted to handle. He had a work order for a faulty air duct near the administrative block, and he had his tool bag and he was thinking, with a small but genuine degree of focus, about whether the canteen would still have hot food by the time he finished his shift. He came around the corner and he saw Zara. He nearly kept walking. Most people did. A dragon standing in a corridor was part of the station's normal visual landscape. You noted it. You adjusted your path. You moved on. But Marcus stopped. He stopped because of how she was standing. It was not the posture of someone waiting. It was not tiredness. It was something that Marcus recognized from a long way back inside himself. It was the posture of a person who has just been told, without cruelty and without drama, that the world will not be helping them today. That their problem is their problem. That the door is closed. He had seen his own mother stand like that once. Outside a government building. On a cold morning. When he was 12 years old and had no idea what to do. He was 34 now. He said, "Hey." Zara looked at him. Her expression was the careful, level kind that people wear when they have learned to protect themselves from pity. He asked if she was okay. She said no. He put his tool bag down on the floor. He stood beside her. He did not crowd her space. He just asked her what happened. She told him. She did not plan to, but he asked without fear, and without the slight backward lean that most species showed around dragons, and something about that made the words come easier than she expected. She told him everything. The 3 cycles. The tunnels. The payment office. Vreth. The processing error with no timeline. Her children on deck 7 right now not eating. Marcus listened to every single word. He did not check his communicator. He did not give her the polite surface-level nod of someone waiting for a pause long enough to exit the conversation. He listened like it mattered. When she finished, there was a short silence. Then he picked up his tool bag. He said, "Come with me." She asked where. He said back to the payment office. She told him she had already tried. Vreth was not going to change his position for a dragon worker on deck 7. That was just how the station worked. That was how things had always worked here. Marcus looked at her. His eyes were steady. Not hard. Not angry. Just completely calm. He said she had gone alone the first time. Then he said something that Zara would think about for a long time afterward. He said she was not alone now. There was a quality in his voice that Zara could not name immediately. It was not sympathy. It was not bravery in the loud, dramatic sense. It was certainty. Quiet, total, personal certainty. The kind that does not argue with itself. She followed him. The door to the payment office opened. Vreth looked up from his screen. His 5 eyes moved from Marcus to Zara, and back to Marcus with the slow, deliberate pace of someone who has never once been in a hurry, because the station runs on his schedule, and everyone on it knows that. He said Marcus's name. He noted that this was not his department. Marcus agreed that it was not. He walked to the desk. He stood in front of it. Straight posture, arms at his sides, voice completely level. He said Zara had 4 children who had not eaten in 3 days, and that was a welfare emergency, not a processing schedule. Vreth leaned back in his chair. He explained that worker payment cycles were standardized, that there were no emergency exceptions built into the labor agreement, that what Marcus was asking for did not exist within the station's protocols. Marcus nodded. Then he said he had read the labor agreements the previous night. Something moved across Vreth's face. Very fast. Almost invisible. But Marcus was watching and he caught it. He said Section 14. Paragraph C. Emergency Family Welfare Provision. He said it from memory, clearly, without hesitation. If a contracted worker with registered minor dependents experiences hardship directly caused by a station-side payment delay, the station director is required to authorize provisional advance payment within 24 hours of the hardship being formally reported. The office was completely silent. All 5 of Vreth's eyes were fixed on Marcus. Completely still. Vreth repeated that Marcus had read the labor agreements. Marcus said he had some time. This was not entirely true. Marcus had spent the 15 minutes between seeing Zara in the corridor and returning to the office reading the full labor agreement on his station tablet. He was a fast reader. It had served him well before. Vreth looked for the exit. He found the documentation requirement. He said formal hardship filings had a standard review time of 48 hours. Marcus said he knew. He also said that Section 14 specified that in cases involving registered minor dependents, the director could release an interim payment at his own discretion while documentation was reviewed. He said the word discretionary carefully, not as a threat, as a fact. Vreth said nothing. Marcus said nothing either. What was happening in that room had nothing to do with labor codes anymore. 2 forces were pressed against each other in a quiet office. One carried a title and a desk, and 2 decades of comfortable authority. The other carried a tool bag and had hair that was slightly too long and eyes that contained no personal agenda whatsoever. That last part was what made Vreth uncomfortable in a way he could not quite name. He picked up his authorization tablet. He pressed 3 points on the screen. An approval chime sounded. He said interim payment authorized. Full wages pending documentation. Marcus thanked him. Politely, the way you thank someone after agreeing on a maintenance schedule, as if nothing significant had occurred. He turned and walked out. Zara followed him. In the corridor, she looked at him. She asked the only word that seemed to cover everything. Why? Marcus said because her kids needed to eat. He said that was enough. Marcus was back in the ventilation corridor 3 hours later when his communicator beeped. Unknown contact. He almost ignored it. He tapped the screen. 5 words. Emphasis they ate. All 4. Thank you emphasis. He read it twice. He placed the communicator face down on his work surface and sat still for a moment. He had done something simple. Something anyone with a tablet and 15 spare minutes could have done. He had not fought anyone. He had not risked anything significant. He had read a document, stood in a room, and refused to leave. And yet those 5 words sat in his chest like something solid and real and permanent. He went back to work. On deck 7, things were different that evening. Zara had returned with real food. Warm food from the upper-level canteen. The kind that smelled like something alive. She set it down in the center of the room and stepped back. Her 4 children moved all at once. Kira divided her portion carefully and passed half to Thorn before touching her own. Ash ate quickly and neatly and kept watching to make sure everyone had enough. Little Ember ate 2 full helpings and then sat back with her round eyes half closed in the deep settled contentment of a creature that is full and warm and safe. Zara sat in the corner and watched them and did not make a single sound. But she was not silent in the way she was usually silent. This was different. This was the silence of something finally releasing, of tension leaving a body that had forgotten what it felt like without it. She pressed her claws to her face. She had not cried in a long time. Dragon mothers from her region had a saying about tears. She had lived by it for years. She did not live by it that night. Across the station, in the administrative block, Commander Vreth was sitting at his desk in the quiet of the evening shift. He was not working. He was thinking. Not about the labor provision. Not about Marcus Cole and his labor agreements. He was thinking about a number. 47. He had pulled the station records himself after the payment office had closed. 47 cases in 11 years. Workers with minor dependents. Delayed wages. Every single one of them had come to the payment office. Every single one of them had been told the same thing. Processing issue. Come back later. Personal problem. Not one of them had known about Section 14. Not one. Because the station had never told them. It had never been part of the orientation. It had never been printed on the intake forms. It had never been read aloud or explained or translated into the 17 languages that 17 different species used on this station every single day. The provision had existed for 11 years. In the right document. On the right page. Going nowhere. Because nobody had ever walked into the right office and read it out loud. Vreth sat with that for a long time. He did not sleep well that night. 2 weeks later, his assistant sent Marcus Cole a summons to the administrative office on Deck 2. Marcus had been to Deck 2 twice in 3 years. The air was different up there. Warmer. The lights ran a softer color. There were windows. Real ones. Wide reinforced panels that looked directly out into open space. And through them, the stars sat still and bright and endless in a way that made the gray corridors of the lower decks feel very far away. Vreth was standing at the window when Marcus came in. He told Marcus to close the door. Marcus closed it. Vreth did not turn from the window right away. He looked at the stars for a moment. Then he spoke. He told Marcus that he had reviewed Section 14. He told him that the provision had not been applied on this station in 11 years. He told him about the 47 families. Marcus listened. Vreth said he was implementing a mandatory labor rights orientation for all new station workers, starting with the next arrival cycle. Every worker, every species, every provision, including Section 14. Marcus stood still. He had not expected this. He had come with no expectation. That was simply how he operated. He showed up and he dealt with what was real, and he did not project. But he had not expected this. He asked why. Vreth was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because 47 families. Very quietly, like a thing he was saying to himself as much as to Marcus. It was not an apology. Vreth was not capable of apologies. But it was an acknowledgement. The specific kind that a person with long-hardened habits produces when something has sat inside them long enough to change the shape of things. Marcus nodded. Vreth picked up a data chip from his desk. He held it out. He said the documentation review for Zara's account had been completed. Full wages. All 3 cycles. Marcus took it. He found Zara that evening on deck 7. She was sitting on the low bench in the corridor outside her quarters. Her children were asleep. She was sitting the way people sit after a crisis finally ends. Not relaxed, just finally allowed to be still. He sat beside her. He handed her the chip without a word. She looked at it. She read the transaction code along its edge. All 3 cycles. Every credit. She held it in her claws. Then Marcus told her about the meeting, about the window, about the 47 families and the orientation program, and what Vreth had said in that quiet office with the stars behind him. When he finished, Zara was silent for a long time. She said 47. He said 47. She looked up at the ceiling of deck 7. Inside, Ember made a small sleeping sound. Then Zara said she wanted to help. With the briefings. She said she spoke 12 languages. She said most workers on this station couldn't follow a legal document in galactic standard. She said she could translate it. She could make sure they understood every word. Marcus looked at her for a moment. He smiled, the surprised kind. He said he was going to ask her exactly that. 3 months later, the program launched. It was the first of its kind in the outer mining sector. Quiet and unannounced and run by a maintenance technician and a dragon mother between them. The 47th family received their full settlement in the first week. No one wrote about it. No outlet ran their names. But on deck 7, beside Zara's door, she carved new symbols into the wall. Slowly, the old way her mother had shown her. Ancient words. They meant, someone stood with us here. Here is the thing nobody talks about in stories like this. Marcus Cole did not do something extraordinary. He did something that was available to anyone on that station at any time. The provision existed. The document existed. The rights existed. They just needed one person to read them out loud in the right room. That is the real twist. The system that hurt 47 families did not survive because it was powerful. It survived because it was quiet. Because it counted on nobody knowing. Because it assumed that the people at the bottom would stay at the bottom simply by not knowing where to look. One human looked. If this opened your eyes, if this story made something shift inside you, then you already understand what this channel is about. Humanity is not great because we are the strongest. We are great because sometimes we stop. And we stay. Let us bring it all together. A dragon mother earned 84 days of wages and had them taken from her without a fight. 4 children went hungry on deck 7 while the system ran exactly as it was designed to run, quietly and without accountability. Then one human stopped in a corridor, listened, read 15 pages of a labor document, and walked back into that office and stood there until something changed. Not just for one family, for 47. That is what this channel exists for. Every single week we bring you 8 chef-y sci-fi stories that remind the entire galaxy and remind us what humans actually are when the moment calls for it. Not warriors, not conquerors, just people who refuse to walk past. Before you go, one question for the comments right now. If you had been walking down that corridor and you saw Zara standing there, would you have stopped? Be honest. We genuinely want to know. If you are new here, hit subscribe. You belong in this community. And the next story is already on your screen right now. It is waiting for you. Click it. See you there.